household, because if you notice on here, there's nothing that gives a relationship. We can make some assumptions as a starting point. Never stay with an assumption, though. You might find some very interesting surprises. And so while we can't say that everyone is related in the way we want them to be related or seems obvious, we can get a sense of those household members, where they lived at various stages of their lives. Okay, if you look here at Catherine Utterback, she's 79 years old, so that has her born about 1771. And she's born in Virginia. Now she has someone of an age to be her son, born in Kentucky. Harmon Utterback, who probably is a son, is born in Kentucky as well. So this shows that they had been in Kentucky for about 16 years. Lavinia, who we assume is the wife of Harmon Utterback, is born in Indiana, and all of their kids are in Missouri. If you look at the oldest child, she's 16 years old. That has them in Missouri in about 1834, which is extremely early in Missouri history. And because of the time element, we're going to have to skim very quickly through things. Okay, this and Fauquier are the areas in Virginia where most of the colonists had their main settlements. From that settlement, they primarily settled in Boone County, Kentucky, Oldham County, Kentucky, Nicholas County, Kentucky, Lincoln County, Kentucky, depending on your family. But those 4 counties had an extraordinarily large number. So these would be places to keep in mind if you're trying to track them. They followed paths. They followed, if you follow along in here, the Great Wagon Road into Georgia. Some of them did. You'll find them in western North Carolina and in Georgia. In Georgia, they received free land if they were Revolutionary War soldiers. In Virginia, they received land in Kentucky. Let me see, where's my Kentucky? Okay, they received land in Kentucky because Kentucky at that time was a part of Virginia, and they awarded bounty lands to soldiers who fought in the Revolution. They also fought in the French and Indian War and received bounty lands in Kentucky. Tennessee, eastern Tennessee was settled by Virginia residents. Central Tennessee was settled by North Carolinians who fought in the Revolution because Tennessee was a part of North Carolina at the time, and North Carolinians settled the central part. The western part of Tennessee was settled by people from Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois coming up, Arkansas going over. We're going to skim through that. Indiana, there were several counties where they settled, in addition to Montgomery County. Okay, as a part, the migration, if you look in the 1850 census, follow the families and it's going to show you the paths. Keep in also mind the migration paths that they have. That's eastern Tennessee. Until someone invents a time machine that'll transport us back to our ancestors' time period, we're left with trying to piece together what the details of their lives were and the clues that they left, and basing our assumptions on those clues. It's not an exact science, but it can give us a window into their lives, and it can help us understand their motivations, trials, and triumphs, and it's a most rewarding experience that I hope you get to experience. Now, I've got about 5 minutes if you have questions, and I realize I've kind of stuffed you like the Dutch goose. Can I answer questions for you? Everybody is asleep then. Yes, thank you. You know, that's interesting. That would be an interesting study to see why those particular people went there. In the case, let me back up. In the case, let's say, of Indiana, you can pretty much figure that they were clustered together because they traveled together as a group. People generally traveled as a group, either a family group, a church group, or a community group. Why they chose those, I'm not sure. That the lands that Lewis and Clark got for their group were usually down in the southern part of Indiana. And as a matter of fact, southern Indiana had so many Virginians in it that during the Civil, or right before the Civil War, there was a real question about whether they were going to secede with the South because there were so many Virginians that were there. In the case of Kentucky, oh, shoot. That's Tennessee, going the wrong way. In the case of Kentucky, the counties where they were awarded land probably had an awful lot to do with where they got it. That the entire state of Kentucky was, all of it was open for bounty awards. And so wherever they got the land probably was where they settled. But again, they traveled as groups. And they may have gone to areas that looked familiar to them or that they were comfortable with. Mm-hmm, John? Boone? Boone County, I beg your pardon? Oh, right, yeah. Boone, as John was saying, Boone County was an organized community very early on. I'm trying to remember, Boonesboro, I think. Wasn't that in isn't Boonesboro? I think so. Yes, sir. I have 4 of them. Oh, and they were Boone County, Oldham County, Lincoln County, and Nicholas County. Right, those are the 4 main ones. Now, it's possible they came to other places. Your ancestor may have been one of those people who got a burr under the saddle and just kept on going, not regarding where anybody else went. So what I would recommend, if you're researching patterns, look for the most common patterns first. That's the easy route. If you don't find them on the most common pattern, then start looking for surrounding areas and follow along with that line. If you find it, look for people that traveled to the same areas that your ancestors were in. Chlor was one of them that I wanted to track, and I kept running into Pennsylvanian chlors, and I couldn't tell the difference without doing a study about which one, which chlor name appeared where. But no, that is a wonderful example. That's a wonderful example. That's an interesting idea. I think what they did, if you were an officer, you got more land, or if you were in the Continental Army, you got larger portions, and I think they had some leeway on where to get it, but not all the lands were open, and so they may have given them a region and said, this is the area that you've got. There's a wonderful book on Kentucky land grants by the Indian lands that they auctioned. That was in the 1815 through 1838 time period. And that's when they auctioned Indian lands. If you were in Revolutionary War, you got preferential. In other words, instead of getting one option, beg your pardon? In Georgia, right. If you were in the Revolutionary War or a widow of a Revolutionary War soldier, instead of just getting one chance at it, you got 2. And so what they did is they had different areas that different tribes were in, and each auctioned off a different geographic area at the time. There are several books that are out on the Georgia, it was called lottery, thank you, Georgia land lotteries. Depending on the land lottery, there were, I think, about 6 of them. 8? Okay, thank you. They were given, not in Georgia, they weren't given land for fighting. No, they had the land lotteries. Virginia and North Carolina, they were given land. There were some fire lands that were given in Ohio to New York or Massachusetts. New York? Connecticut. Time-wise. Okay, thank you very much. If you have other questions, please feel free to talk to me after.